She was just the janitor, overlooked, underestimated, and ignored. But when she stumbled upon a hidden secret, her quiet world turned into a battlefield for truth. She faced lies, betrayal, and powerful enemies. But will her courage be enough to bring justice, or will her voice be silenced forever? That's why in a world that's quick to judge, and even quicker to silence, our stories get buried, but not here. Because here, we bring them to light. The voices they tried to ignore, the people they looked down on, the moments they thought would stay hidden. We tell it all. From the shadows of injustice to the rise of the underdog, these are the true, raw, and powerful stories of survival, resistance, and redemption. Stories that make you angry, make you cry, and make you never forget. Welcome to Global Black Voices, where the silence speak, the underestimated rise, and the truth hits harder than fiction. Subscribe, because the next story might just be yours. At 6:15 every morning, before the school hallways buzzed with voices, before teachers clicked open their laptops, and long before the principal made his usual swaggering walk through the halls, Miss Lila was already there, mop in hand, keys on her hip, cleaning up after a school that barely noticed her. Not that she expected anyone to. She didn't speak much. Her uniform didn't command respect. Her badge didn't say educator or admin. It just said custodian, and that was enough for most people to look past her. But what they didn't know, what they never bothered to ask, was that Lila Monroe used to be a high school English teacher, that she once led literacy campaigns in 3 different states, that she stepped down after losing her son in a crosswalk accident caused by a reckless city official, and the grief never let her return to the front of the classroom. She took the janitor job because it was quiet, because she still loved kids, and because sometimes it was the only place that didn't ask her to pretend like she was okay. But that all changed on a Thursday morning, the day she saw Principal Gavin Knox shove a student. It was early, barely 7:30. Lila had just finished restocking paper towels in the East Wing restroom when she heard the sharp sound of voices. Not the playful banter of teenagers, not the stern tone of a teacher. This was different, angry, cutting. She paused, turned the corner slowly, staying behind a row of lockers. What she saw made her grip her mop tighter. Principal Knox, tall, red-faced, always dressed like he was headed to a country club, not a Title I high school, had Jaden Fuller, a sophomore, pinned against the wall. Jaden's backpack had fallen to the floor. His glasses were askew, his eyes wide. "You want to lie to me again?" Knox hissed, gripping the boy's collar. I didn't take anything," Jaden stammered. "You're a thief. You kids are all the same." That's when Lila stepped forward, quietly but firmly. "Let him go." Knox turned, startled. The same look he always gave her in passing, half acknowledgement, half annoyance. "This doesn't concern you." "It does if you're putting hands on a child." Jaden had already scooted away, clutching his bag. But the look in his eyes, that mix of fear and shame, Lila had seen it before, on her son's face, years ago, right before he stopped trusting the system that was supposed to protect him. Knox straightened his tie, scoffed. "You're the janitor, Lila, not a counselor. Don't confuse the two." He walked away like nothing had happened. But Lila didn't forget, and Jaden didn't either. That evening she wrote everything down, every word, every action. She had no footage, no witnesses, just her own word. And that, in Knox's world, meant next to nothing, until the next week, when Jaden was suspended for stealing a teacher's phone, a phone that was later found under a stack of returned books. No apology, no reversal, just a record that would follow him. That's when Lila made a decision. She started documenting. She stayed late, not to mop floors, but to listen, to the stories kids didn't feel safe telling. She started gathering evidence, text messages from students, whispers of threats, rumors of favors exchanged for silence, and slowly the picture came into focus. Knox wasn't just strict, he was abusive, targeted, calculated, and protected by a staff too afraid to cross him. But Lila wasn't staff. Not really. One evening, 2 weeks later, she found a folder in the admin copy room, left open by mistake. Inside were disciplinary referrals, some real, many fabricated. And at the top of the pile, a forged signature from a parent who'd been deported 2 years ago. She took a photo of the page, heart racing, fingers trembling. She wasn't just cleaning up after messes anymore. She was about to cause one. The next morning, she didn't show up with her mop cart. She walked into the district office instead, asked for an appointment with the superintendent. At first, they brushed her off, until she said 2 words, child endangerment. They let her in. Lila laid out everything, names, incidents, photos, dates. She spoke calmly, precisely, and when she was done, the room was silent. The superintendent, Dr. Tessa Ruiz, a no-nonsense woman with sharp eyes, asked one question, "Why didn't you come forward sooner?" Lila didn't flinch. "Because I didn't think anyone would listen to someone with a mop and a keyring." But Ruiz did listen. And what came next, no one saw coming. Within 48 hours, Principal Knox was placed on administrative leave. An internal investigation was launched. Parents started talking. Students whispered in the halls. Teachers looked at Lila with something close to shame, maybe even respect. But Knox wasn't done. That Monday, just before school started, Lila found a note taped to her locker. "You think you've won, but I have friends, higher than you know." She folded the note slowly, walked to her cart, and kept cleaning, because she knew this wasn't the end. That night, someone broke into her car. Papers stolen. Glove box rifled through. No camera footage. No suspects. But Lila wasn't rattled. She made copies of everything, and she had one more card to play. What she hadn't told anyone, not the superintendent, not even Jaden, was that one of the security cameras Knox had claimed was broken. She'd fixed it herself, and it had captured everything. The shove, the threats, the fear in Jaden's eyes. She hadn't released the footage yet, because timing matters. And Lila Monroe had learned something over the years. People don't look at janitors, but maybe they should, because when you're underestimated, you're free to move unseen. And that's when real justice begins. By Monday morning, the school felt different, not louder, not messier, but tense. Whispers cut through the halls. Teachers huddled in doorways. Students looked up from their phones with wide eyes, because the news had spread. Principal Gavin Knox, the man who ran Jefferson High like a private fiefdom, was under investigation. No one said Lila's name out loud, not yet, but she felt the shift. They didn't look through her anymore. Now they looked at her, some with curiosity, a few with resentment, one or two with quiet nods of respect. But she didn't need their reactions. She just needed to make it through the day. What no one knew, what only Lila knew, was that the real battle hadn't started yet. Because late Sunday night, she received a voicemail. Block number. No message. Just static. Then a single sentence in a man's voice. "Walk away, Miss Monroe. This doesn't end well for you." She replayed it 3 times, not out of fear, but to memorize the voice. It wasn't Knox, but it was someone close. She didn't report it, not yet. Instead, she made a copy, uploaded it to a secure folder, then printed transcripts of the camera footage, the one she had fixed herself weeks ago, the footage that proved what happened to Jaden, that showed Knox's hand against that boy's chest, his threats, his cruelty. She hadn't released it because she was waiting for the moment they tried to bury her. And that moment arrived Tuesday. Just after 2 p.m., she was called into the vice principal's office. Mr. Henry Sands, soft-spoken, always nervous around Knox. He didn't make eye contact as he slid the paper across the desk, a formal reprimand, for violating internal protocol and accessing restricted surveillance without authorization. Translation? They were trying to get rid of her. Lila picked up the paper, read it once, then looked him dead in the eye. "You want me gone, Henry?" He flinched. "It's not me. It's the district office. They said I was at the district office, and they never said anything about this." He blinked. swallowed hard. Lila stood slowly. You tell whoever told you to sign this. They're about to regret underestimating a janitor. And she walked out. That night she sent the footage. Not to the local news. To every parent-teacher email list in the district. She didn't write a long message. Just a subject line. You deserve to know what's happening at your school. By morning, the video had gone viral. Not on social media. Lila didn't trust that route yet. But in inboxes, text threads, private group chats, parents were furious. Jaden's mother, who'd been told her son was acting out, was at the school by 8 a.m., demanding a meeting. 3 other families followed, and then the fire started. Knox showed up, not in his usual polished suit. This time he looked rough, tired, agitated. He marched into the main office, slammed his briefcase on the counter, and barked at the secretary. Call the district. I need them to shut this down. He didn't notice Lila watching from the end of the hall, didn't see her phone in her hand, didn't realize she'd hit record. Because when a man feels his power slipping, he shows who he really is. He stormed into his office, slammed the door. 10 minutes later, he emerged again, this time with 2 school security guards, walked straight toward her. Miss Monroe, he said coldly, you're being placed on immediate leave pending investigation into data breach and defamation. Lila didn't argue. She didn't even blink. She reached into her bag, pulled out a manila folder, and handed it to him. What's this? An affidavit from Superintendent Ruiz confirming that I was authorized to review camera feeds as part of a district-led misconduct investigation. His hands froze. And this, she added, holding up her phone, is the recording of you trying to intimidate me on school property. I'll let the school board hear it first. Unless you'd prefer I send it to Channel 9. Knox stepped back. His jaw tightened. His face flushed. He opened his mouth, but no words came out, because for the first time, he was speechless. Lila leaned in just slightly. I was invisible to you, just the janitor, but I see everything. And now, so does everyone else. She walked away. The hallway was dead quiet, except for one voice from a student standing nearby, holding a phone of their own. She's not just the janitor. By Thursday, the school board had convened an emergency session. Knox didn't show up. Lila did, in plain clothes. No mop, no keys, just dignity. She didn't grandstand. She read a prepared statement, calm, director. Every word measured like poetry. She ended it with one line. Power without accountability is just abuse in a nicer suit. The boardroom was still, and the fallout was immediate. Knox was suspended indefinitely. The school board launched a full-scale audit into his tenure. And Lila? She was offered a new role. Head of Student Advocacy and Equity. Same building, different keys. But Lila didn't answer right away, because she knew this wasn't over. A week later, she received a thick envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside were 2 things. 1, a flash drive. 2, a note. Thought you'd like to know. Knox wasn't acting alone. Play the file. She slid the drive into her laptop, watched, and her breath caught. Because what she saw on that screen wasn't just Knox. It was someone higher, someone she trusted, someone from the district office, laughing in the background while a student's records were being altered. And just like that, the story wasn't over. It was just beginning. The video on the flash drive lasted exactly 42 seconds. No fancy angles, just grainy footage. But the audio was crystal clear, a voice Lila knew well. Daniel Huxley, assistant superintendent, public face of the district's equity and education campaign, polished, smiling. The man who once shook Lila's hand at a faculty luncheon and told her, "It's people like you who hold this place together." Now she heard him on the tape, chuckling, as Principal Knox laughed about falsifying a student's GPA to disqualify them from a scholarship committee. "Just don't make it too obvious," Huxley said in the clip. "We're walking a line here." Lila sat in her kitchen for a long time, staring at her laptop. She didn't move, didn't blink. Because this wasn't just about Knox anymore. This wasn't just about one crooked principal. This was a network. She knew what she had, and she also knew what it meant. The moment she released that footage, she wouldn't just be targeting a disgraced man on the way out. She'd be exposing a system that had protected him, and the people in that system, they had resources, they had power, and if she made the wrong move, they could make her disappear. Not literally, but the kind of disappearance that happens without a trace. Jobs pulled, reputation smeared, a whisper campaign that ends with locked doors and cold shoulders. So Lila waited. She copied the video onto 2 additional drives, stored one in her safety deposit box, gave the other to someone she trusted. Officer Micah Dorsey, a school resource officer with integrity and a history of standing up when it counted. He didn't ask questions when she handed him the envelope, just nodded once. "I'll hold on to it, just in case." The next day, her offer to lead the new Office of Equity and Advocacy was suddenly put on pause. No explanation, no follow-up, just a polite voicemail from Human Resources, and an icy silence. Lila knew what was happening. They were circling the wagons. The message was clear: back off. But Lila had never been good at following warnings. Instead, she returned to campus, not as a custodian, not as an administrator, but as a citizen. She stood on the sidewalk with a small fold-out table and one cardboard sign: "Know your rights, ask me anything." She didn't shout. She didn't argue. She just sat there, quietly handing out flyers about student rights, district policies, and how to file formal complaints. Within 20 minutes, the principal's secretary came outside. "You need to leave." "I'm on public property," Lila replied calmly. "This isn't appropriate." "What's inappropriate is covering up academic sabotage," she said louder this time, just loud enough for the group of students across the courtyard to hear. They looked up, started whispering. By the end of the week, a small crowd had gathered every day. Parents started showing up too. Then a local reporter, then a podcast producer, and suddenly the pressure that had once cornered Lila shifted directions. But power doesn't surrender quietly. On Monday morning, she received a certified letter from the district's legal department. They were suing her for defamation, for breach of confidentiality, for damaging the public trust. It was meant to scare her, but they made one mistake. They filed the lawsuit publicly, and that meant reporters could read it. And the moment they did, they started asking questions, loud ones. On Thursday night, Channel 12 ran the story. By Friday morning, the local teachers' union had released a statement supporting Lila. The district was in damage control mode now. Emails leaked. The flash drive footage? That hadn't even dropped yet, because Lila was waiting for the moment they pushed too far, and they did. The next week, her bank froze her paycheck, said the district had filed a payroll stop due to pending legal review. No money, no job, no backing, just Lila, alone. But she still had her name, her truth, and her drive. That night, she called Officer Dorsey. "Send it," she said. "You sure?" "I've never been more sure." Within 24 hours, the video hit every major platform. Not because Lila uploaded it, but because a former student did. Jaden. He wrote a caption that said, "This is what they tried to bury. Miss Lila saved me. Now she's saving the truth." The video exploded. 3 million views in 48 hours. Local news, national outlets, online forums, everyone was talking. And the fallout? Immediate. Daniel Huxley was placed on leave. The district board scheduled an emergency ethics meeting. And Lila? She got a call from the State Department of Education. They weren't calling to scold her. They were calling to recruit her. But before she could even answer, there was a knock on her door. Late at night. Too late for a neighbor. Too deliberate for a package. She opened the door slowly. A man stood there. Tall, gray suit. No badge. Just a folder in his hand. "You've made quite the mess," he said, not smiling. "And now?" He held out the folder. "We need to talk, because you've just uncovered something much bigger than a crooked school district." Lila didn't flinch. She stepped aside. "Then come in, and don't leave anything out." He didn't give a name. Just walked in, sat down, and placed the folder on her dining room table. No coffee, no small talk, just business. Lila didn't ask who sent him. She already knew. This wasn't a local matter anymore. Not after the footage of Assistant Superintendent Huxley went viral. Not after the public outcry. Not after the Department of Education launched its probe. This man, this quiet, composed figure in the gray suit, was from federal oversight, somewhere between ethics compliance and internal investigations. First, he said, you need to understand, we've been watching this district for a while. What you exposed, that's just the beginning. He opened the folder. Inside, contracts, memos, redacted emails, and at the center of it all, a logo Lila had never seen before. Educor Strategic Services. What is this? She asked. Private consulting firm. Started showing up in school districts 5 years ago. They pitch budget audits, performance reviews. But what they're really doing is laundering influence. He flipped to a highlighted page. It was a contract signed by Daniel Huxley. The district had paid Educor $2.6 million over 3 years. No board approval, no public bid, no oversight. And the kicker? Educor had final review power over student disciplinary policy and scholarship selections. Lila stared at the page. You mean they were choosing who got punished, who got scholarships? In more cases than you'd like to believe. She sat back, heart racing. It made sense now. The inconsistencies, the patterns, why certain students, always the quiet ones, the low-income ones, the ones who didn't have powerful parents, kept slipping through the cracks. They targeted the invisible ones, she whispered. The man nodded. Until one of the invisible ones turned out to be you. He closed the folder. What you've done, it started a chain reaction. Educor's footprint shows up in 6 other districts across the state. 1 in Georgia, 2 in Mississippi. We're working the back channels. Lila leaned forward. Why are you telling me this? Why me? He didn't hesitate. Because they'll come after you next, and you need to know what you're up against. I already do, she said. They tried to silence me. Now they're just louder about it. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a second envelope, smaller, sealed. This isn't public yet, but it will be soon. She opened it. Inside, a subpoena, addressed to her from the state attorney general's office. She was being called as a material witness in a case against the district, and possibly Educor. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, from clarity. She looked up. What happens if I testify? You pull the thread, and a lot of people who thought they were untouchable unravel. He stood to leave. Be careful, Miss Monroe. The janitor role doesn't protect you anymore. Now you're the threat. She locked the door behind him and leaned against it, exhaling slow. And then she did what she always did when the world felt too heavy. She grabbed her mop, not because she needed to clean, but because it reminded her she never needed a title to hold power. That Monday, Jaden stopped by her house with a flash drive of his own. I've been collecting things, he said. Screenshots, messages from other students, stuff they were scared to show anyone. She opened the drive, dozens of files, all showing patterns, students from marginalized backgrounds disproportionately suspended, disqualified, silenced. A quiet war no one talked about. You did all this? She asked. Jaden shrugged. I learned from the best. She smiled. For the first time in weeks, it felt like she wasn't alone. But the opposition was growing louder. Educor issued a statement calling the viral footage misleading. The district filed a formal complaint accusing Lila of violating data integrity policies. Whispers started online that she was exaggerating, that she was unstable, that she was just a janitor who got lucky. But Lila knew what that was. Desperation. She didn't need luck. She had evidence and the truth. 2 nights before her subpoenaed appearance, someone broke into her garage. Didn't take anything. Just ransacked her files. Left the door swinging open. It wasn't a robbery. It was a message. Back off. She didn't. On the morning of her appearance, she wore her old uniform, navy blue work shirt, name tag, faded jeans, not to make a statement, but because it reminded her of who they'd underestimated. She walked into the hearing chamber with her head high. The place was packed. Reporters, district reps, a few familiar faces from school. Jaden was there. So was Officer Dorsey. As she took her seat, a lawyer for the district leaned over and whispered, "You sure you want to do this? You won't win." Lila looked him straight in the eye. "I already did." What happened next wasn't broadcast, wasn't live streamed. But by the end of the day, word had leaked. Lila Monroe's testimony had opened a new investigation into EduCorps state-level contracts. And that was just the beginning. But before she left the courthouse, she received a message on her phone. Block number. Same voice as before. "You're in over your head. This goes higher than you know." But this time, there was one more sentence. "And we're not going to let you burn it down." Lila read it twice, then pressed record on her phone. Because if they wanted war, they picked the wrong woman. It had been 12 days since the subpoena. 12 days since Lila Monroe sat in front of a state panel and dropped a truth bomb that fractured an entire district. And in those 12 days, the sky hadn't fallen, but the ground underneath her kept shifting. The news cycle had caught wind, first regional, then national. They weren't talking about Lila by name, not yet, but they were asking questions about EduCorps, about school privatization, about the racial and economic targeting buried beneath student performance metrics. Meanwhile, back in Jefferson County, the district scrambled. A new acting superintendent was installed. Daniel Huxley hadn't been seen in public since the hearing. Principal Knox? Silent, rumored to be lawyering up. And EduCorps? They were ghosting the media entirely, but none of that changed the fact that Lila still woke up every morning to silence. No job, no income, no formal protection, just purpose and fire. But fire draws enemies. That Friday, Jaden's mom stopped by with a package that had been misdelivered to her address. No name, just Lila's house number scribbled in black marker. Inside, a single sheet of paper, typed, clean, and chilling. "Your actions have compromised a program with state-level clearance. We know about the footage. We know what you've given the Attorney General. If you don't stop, others will pay the price." No signature, no return address. Just a photo attached. Jaden, on his way home from school. The message was clear. This wasn't just about intimidation anymore. It was a threat. That night, Lila didn't sleep. She watched the footage again, the video that started it all. The shove, the voice, the injustice. Then she opened her laptop, typed one sentence. "If anything happens to Jaden Fuller or his family, the next leak includes financial records, internal contracts, and personnel files. I have all of it." She sent it from an encrypted account to EduCorps' central inbox. Then she sent copies to 3 journalists, and a fourth to Officer Dorsey. "Insurance," she said over the phone. He didn't ask how she got the files. Didn't need to. Because people talk when they think you're powerless. And Lila had been listening for years. The next morning she received a call. Unknown number. Female voice. Calm, controlled. "You just made yourself a target, but you also made yourself impossible to silence." Lila didn't respond. The voice continued. "We'd like to meet. Discreetly. You're not the only one fighting this." "Who is we?" Lila asked. A pause, then, "Former district employees? Investigative attorneys. People who saw the rot and walked away, but didn't forget. You made them remember." Lila was quiet. Then, "Why me?" Another pause. "Because janitors see what no one else sees, and you didn't look away." They met the next evening, underground parking lot, level 4, 3 people. No names, no small talk, just files, evidence, testimonies, former EduCorps contractors, ex-educators who'd been bought out, then pushed out. One woman handed her a flash drive labeled only Rayner. "What's this?" Lila asked. "Proof that EduCorps' directives didn't come from Huxley or Knox. They came from someone else. Someone with state access. Who? They didn't answer, just gave her a name. Miriam Rayner, Deputy Director of State Education Funding. A woman who'd never once been on Lila's radar. Because she worked quietly, behind sealed budgets and closed-door reviews. She's the one who pushed EduCore into pilot districts, who signed off on Knox's discretionary power. She even approved the altered scholarship rubrics. Lila took the drive, nodded once, and then they were gone. The next day, Lila tried to confirm the name. But Miriam Rayner, her records had been scrubbed. No digital footprint, no employee page, like she never existed. But Lila had the drive. And on that drive, audio, leaked from a Zoom call, dated 6 months ago. Rayner's voice unmistakable, saying, "Our role is to shape long-term outcomes. We don't need every student to succeed, just the ones who maintain the metrics. Let the rest fall away." It hit Lila like a punch. This wasn't incompetence, it was policy. That night, Lila paced her living room, files spread across the table. Footage queued, evidence stacked like dominoes. She had enough to bury them. But she also knew what would happen if she moved too soon. They'd spin it. They'd dismiss it as doctored, misleading, taken out of context. She needed someone inside. Someone who still worked under Rayner. Someone close. She thought of one person. Someone who'd always played it safe. Tobias Gentry, an old colleague. Now an analyst in the Office of School Compliance. Smart, calculated, never picked sides. Until now. She messaged him, "You ever wonder what happens when the wrong student disappears?" He replied 4 minutes later, "Meet me Tuesday, 7 p.m. Don't tell anyone." And just like that, a door cracked open. But behind that door was a truth bigger than even Lila expected. Because Rayner wasn't working alone. There was a shadow board, private donors, investment groups, political names, and what they were doing in schools was only the first layer. Lila had unearthed a thread that didn't stop at Jefferson High, didn't stop at EduCore, didn't even stop at the state. It ran nationwide, and someone very powerful was about to make her the center of a storm. Lila Monroe sat across from Tobias Gentry in a dim corner of a small cafe 2 blocks from the state capitol. He looked older than she remembered, gray creeping into his hair, the usual calm in his eyes replaced by something closer to fear. He slid a folder across the table. "Don't ask how I got it," he said. "Just know it's real." Inside, emails, meeting transcripts, transfer orders, all tied to one name, Miriam Rayner. And beneath her, a web of donors, lobbyists, and political committees stretching into Washington. Lila scanned the documents in silence. Page after page of sanctioned sabotage. Students profiled by ZIP code. Funding redirected under the guise of achievement gaps. Scholarships reshuffled to benefit hand-picked candidates with connections. "What is this?" she finally asked. "It's the playbook," Tobias said quietly. "They didn't just rig a school system, they turned kids into metrics, and silence into policy." Lila felt her pulse slow, not from shock, but from clarity. This was it. This was the moment where her story could either end in whispers or echo like thunder. She stood, thanked him, then walked out into the night with the folder tucked under her coat. She didn't go home. She went to the local radio station. She didn't ask for permission. She just walked in, looked the night producer in the eye and said, "I have something to say, and I need someone to hear it." The young woman hesitated. Then, as if sensing something deeper beneath Lila's calm, she waved her in. Lila sat in the dim booth. The mic warmed. The red light blinked on. And she spoke. No script. No fanfare. Just truth. "My name is Lila Monroe. You may not know me. I'm not a politician. I'm not an executive. I'm not a name on your TV. I'm a janitor. Or at least I used to be. And I'm telling you tonight that something is broken. Not just in Jefferson High, not just in one district, but in the way we've allowed power to operate without question, in the way we've taught ourselves to believe that some people matter more, and some students less. I have proof, names, documents, voices. I've seen young black boys branded as threats before they hit puberty. Girls of color suspended for raising their voices, while others get second chances. I watched a system punish the quiet, reward the cruel, and forget the brave. But not anymore. The clip went viral before she even left the station. And this time, no one could stop it. By morning, the story was everywhere. The documents authenticated, the funding trail exposed, the public outraged. Miriam Rayner was placed under federal investigation. EduCor's contracts suspended across 4 states. The Department of Education issued a formal statement acknowledging systemic failure. And Lila? She turned down interviews, turned down book deals. She didn't want to become a symbol. She just wanted the truth to land where it belonged, in plain sight. 2 weeks later, she was invited to speak at the State Education Summit. She almost didn't go, but Jaden called her the night before. "Miss Monroe," he said, "if you don't stand up there, they'll think you were just lucky." Not right. So she went. Same work shirt, same soft shoes, same calm voice. The auditorium was packed, cameras rolling. She walked to the podium. No notes, no teleprompter, just a deep breath. "I was never supposed to be in this room. I was supposed to be invisible. But I've learned something along the way. The people with titles will tell you that change comes from the top, that you need authority to be heard, that you need permission to matter. But that's a lie. You don't need a podium to tell the truth. You don't need a microphone to make an impact. And you don't need a title to make history. Sometimes all you need is a mop, a spine, and the refusal to stay quiet." There was silence when she finished. Then came the standing ovation. But Lila didn't smile. She just stepped down, walked out the back door, and caught the bus home. Because she wasn't chasing applause. She never was. She returned to volunteering at the community center. She helped students apply for scholarships, the real ones. She trained teachers on implicit bias, helped them see what they hadn't before. And sometimes she just sat quietly in the back of classrooms, offering nothing but her presence. Because presence was enough. Because when people see you, even when they didn't before, it changes everything. Months later, the school board voted unanimously to create a new annual award, the Lila Monroe Integrity in Education Honor. It was given to one student, one educator, and one community member each year, people who stood up even when no one asked them to. Jaden was the first student recipient. Lila didn't attend the ceremony. She just watched from the hallway, still wearing her work shoes, still invisible by choice, but no longer overlooked. Power doesn't always wear a badge, hold a title, or sit behind a desk. Sometimes it pushes a broom, and sometimes the people we underestimate the most are the ones who save us all. They laughed, they judged, they tried to bury the truth, but the truth rose anyway. Another voice heard, another story they couldn't erase. And we're just getting started. If this story moved you, shook you, made you see the world a little differently, then you're exactly where you need to be. Because here on Global Black Voices, we don't just tell stories. We expose injustice. We lift the unheard. And we shine a light where others won't. So like, share, and hit that subscribe button. Because the fight isn't over. And the next story might be the one they don't want you to hear.